Folks, thanks so much for tuning in again. Today, we're going to give you some stories and headlines that you probably even haven't heard in mainstream media. And we're getting lots of comments about the fact that a number of the stories we deal with every day we're the first ones to jump on them. And then other major media outlets seem to pick them up. I'm not saying that they're following my lead, but it's quite interesting. So Iran, of course, continues. We like to give you the update each day. And it's interesting now because it seems that the regime in Iran, and remember, the Iranian regime, this Islamist regime, they are a death cult. They worship death. They want to see death. These Islamist extremists want to bring in the annihilation of Jews everywhere, the annihilation of Israel, and eventually they want to be seen as the ones that will bring in the new caliphate all the way around the world. So keep that in mind. Having said that, it seems like they also are able to read the writing on the wall, and they're getting to the place where their society economically could well collapse. We're going to see what develops there, but they've made a proposal that's interesting. They want to start what's called an authority on the Strait of Hormuz. So it seems like they're saying, the Iranian regime is saying, let's talk about this. But overall, we know that their main thing is to buy time. They think that because mainstream media and the rest of the world hates Donald Trump and hates the U.S., that the constant media flavor, which is appealing to people who read by the masses, the constant flavor is anti-U.S. and amazingly, it's sort of pro-Iranian, pro the death cult government of Iran. So it's we'll see if they're serious about wanting to establish an authority over the Strait of Hormuz to allow traffic to go through there. Remember, that's the largest reason for price increases on so many products, is because of the trade being disrupted through that particular strait, trade which brings everything from oil to gas to fertilizer to all kinds of chemicals that are used in everyday life. Anyway, let's keep an eye on that. Another area that mainstream media ignores, but it's becoming more and more obvious, and you're going to see it more and more, and we do talk about it here. If I said to you, who is Nayib Bukele? You probably wouldn't know. Some of you who are smarter than I am would know. And he's the president of El Salvador. He was first elected in 2021, re-elected in 2024 with a huge majority. And he's the guy who has literally turned the world upside down in El Salvador. He has built the giant prison there. They've taken thousands of serious repeat violent criminals off the streets by the thousands. The homicide rate in El Salvador has dropped hugely. The crime rate, the drug rate, people not dying on the streets of overdoses. He's done amazing things. He was just in the media again where he had his government tearing down some of these huge statues, large metal statues that you can find all through El Salvador, statues of like weird gods and goddesses, and also statues of former politicians who were very corrupt, killed many people. They're tearing them down. There was an image you can see from yesterday where they pulled down this giant sort of goddess statue. And what they're doing with these statues, because most of them are metal, they're melting them down, and then they use them for things like manhole covers. So it's quite a thing he's doing. Actually, some biblical reflection there about tearing down the statues. Anyway, life has improved significantly in El Salvador, but it's not just in those particular areas. Of course, crime and everything else way down. They are paying down their debt. They're wrestling their economy under control. They're keeping taxes down. They're bringing in economic reforms. And mainstream media does not like talking about that because mainstream media is culturally Marxist. Don't forget that. Cultural Marxism means you can't have anything to do with God. The family must be reconstructed. People should not be trying to buy their own homes, and the economy should be more socialistically driven. So whenever there's a country that defies those things and does extremely well, mainstream media doesn't do a lot of talking about it. And this has been a trend in South America. This is yet another country that has tried for decades these socialistic approaches. It's only resulted in increased poverty for everybody and increased crime. So interesting to see some of the shift going on there. So remember the name Nayib Bukele, very famous president, and you're going to be hearing more and more about him. We'll see. The other thing that's sort of interesting in his own background, he's half Palestinian. He's half Palestinian. One of his parents is actually Palestinian. And so you would naturally think he would be anti-Israel. And in fact, he's very pro-Israel. So that's another reason media does not like to focus on him. He, in fact, is pro-Israel and anti-Hamas. Well, another guy who's made a shift, Mark Cuban, everybody knows him, a billionaire, and he's been on, of course, these shows in the U.S. and across Canada. Mark Cuban, you see him on the Shark Tank. He has been a previous supporter in the last election of, Kamala Harris and others, and now he's joined forces with Trump. TrumpRx.gov, that's Trump's, or at least his family's pharmacy company, and they are very focused on driving down the cost of pharmaceuticals. And actually, to his credit, Mark Cuban has been focused on that too. His company is called Cost Plus. And so that wants to, they are now joining forces with Trump RX, and their overall goal is to drive down the price of pharmaceuticals. Interesting to see that shift taking place there. Well, the interesting situation that is evolving with OPEC. Remember, OPEC is the organization of petroleum countries, petroleum exporting countries, and the UAE, major country in the Middle East, bailed out of that, no longer wanting to strangle the world with the rest of the OPEC countries, but just out to produce oil and gas and see the price of oil and gas come down. And it looks like that entire group, OPEC, is maybe going to collapse, which really would be a good thing in the long run, because it would mean that the stranglehold on the price of oil and gas and energy from the Middle East would be somewhat released, and we would see more cooperative realities there. We'll see what happens, but the cracks in that group are getting larger. So watch today. We've been talking about the fact that Thomas Massie, running for re-election today in the state of Kentucky, and he's being opposed by Ed Galreen. And Thomas Massie has been opposed to Donald Trump all the way along, even though Thomas Massie is a Republican. We'll see if he loses his election. You'll see that you saw in the news, and as we somewhat predicted, Paul Cassidy, Paul Cassidy lost a seat. He was one of the guys early on who was supporting the impeachment of Trump way back, and Trump again showing that Trump continues to have power within the Republican Party because he supported the guy running against Paul Cassidy, and Paul Cassidy lost. We'll see if Thomas Massie is going to lose, because Thomas Massie is very popular in Kentucky, and let's see if he loses and pays the price of opposing Trump. Let's see where that goes. Well, a lot of pressure against the Trump administration as the Iranian situation continues, because the gas price went up again after the Trump meeting with President Xi in China. We saw the gas price go up because not a whole lot materialized from that. So if you're looking at the U.S. side, gas, which was $2.89 a gallon before all of this started, just not that long ago, February 1st, now up to $3.48. So that's a 56% rise in the price of gas. That's a corresponding in Canada. It's about the same, significant price rises from before this started. So again, it's that whole economic pressure and who's going to win out. Will the Iranians, with all of the media supporting them, will they win out? And will people become so frustrated with the war against Iran that they're going to quit supporting Trump? We're going to see where it goes. Remember, Trump has said, and it hasn't. President Xi of China hasn't denied it. He has said that President Xi of China, also agreeing with Trump that Iran should not get a nuclear weapon. So even the Chinese, who don't believe necessarily in these theological arguments that go on with the Islamists, are saying this would be a bad scene if Iran had a nuclear weapon. Not a lot of media, again, talking about the fact that on that point, Xi agrees with Trump. Let's see what happens. There was a very tragic situation just happened in San Diego. You've been reading about it. 5 people dead so far, resulting from a shooting that took place in a mosque in San Diego. And apparently the 2 shooters also dead. The 2 shooters, we're waiting for this to be confirmed, were found dead in a car, teenagers, and apparently either shot themselves or shot each other or committed suicide in the car after killing the people at the mosque. This is a tragic situation. Our hearts go out to the people at that mosque and in the Muslim community there in San Diego. And I want to point something out here. There's been an outpouring of support, sympathy, and grief from the Christian community and from the Jewish community related to this shooting in the mosque, giving all the support they can and messages of support and sympathy. The same thing does not happen now. Don't get upset, but the same thing does not happen when there's something that takes place in a church, a shooting, or when there's something, a tragedy that takes place in a synagogue. When it is perpetrated by a person who identifies as Muslim, there is very little official commentary from the Muslim community writ large. And people are noticing this, and they're starting to say, you know, we who are not Muslim are very sympathetic when there's killing of Muslims. We don't see the same at the same level. You don't see it from the Muslim community. My encouragement to the Muslim community and to imams in the Muslim community, you need also to speak out when your own people are the ones who are convicted of doing slaughters. And most of these type of killings that have been going on the last few years have been committed by people who claim to be Muslim. And make note, when a person who is not a Muslim, like I don't know if there's any religion associated with these 2 people, 2 teenagers who did the killing, but I can tell you there is no Christian, there's no pastor anywhere that is promising these people that great gifts in heaven for going out and killing Muslims. There's no promise of 72 virgins waiting for them for their deeds. There's no mass gathering of millions of dollars by Christian churches when somebody kills Muslims. And so this is increasingly becoming a very stark difference between Islam, Christianity, and the Jewish people. It seems that the Christian and Jewish communities always will support and decry and condemn killings. Even if it's their own people doing it, they condemn it. You don't see this from the Muslim, the Islamic community. So a word of encouragement there to imams everywhere. You might want to give that some thought and see what happens. Well, in ongoing culture situation, the series called Heated Rivalry, that's a hugely successful series. And first of all, at first blush, it looks great because it's about one of our favorite games, and that's hockey. Hockey is a tough sport. Those of us who've played it, it's very fast moving. You're playing where you're carrying big pieces of lumber while you're flying down the ice. And hockey skates are very sharp and can cut. And it's the only sport where when a fight breaks out, the referees stand back for a few minutes and let the people just slug it out. And so it's I guess kind of appealing to people in terms of making movies about it. That particular one called Heated Rivalry adds the notion of same-sex relationship between 2 of the players. And now there's a new series out. It's called Off Campus, and they say it's going to be just as popular. Again, it's related to hockey. The 2 people in it, the stars, the male and the female, apparently are heterosexual, but we're already been told that there will be elements of queer and LGBTQ coming through the series, and these things just get huge audiences. I'll leave that up for you to decide if you're liking where that goes. An interesting thing happened yesterday, or 2 days ago, in a Major League Baseball game. Chicago Cubs, one of their top players, a guy by the name of Pete Armstrong, he got into a bit of a shouting match with a fan. Pete had dropped the ball. He was trying to catch, make quite a difficult catch. Anyway, he dropped at a woman who was just on the other side of the fence of him, jumped up and shouted at him and said, "You suck." And he turned around, and it's all on record, it's all on video. He said to her some of really the most vile things that a man could say to a woman. But here's the interesting thing in which, he shouted at her and told her to do something which I won't repeat here on the air. Um, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, he probably would have lost his job. The ball player probably would have lost his job. And now it's just kind of a shrug. And it just shows where, overall, in terms of social discourse across society, things have really dropped. And some of the things that we used to hold in higher esteem, like how you treat women with respect, those things are really going by the side and dropping away. I'll let you decide if that's a good trend. I don't personally think it is. We'll see where this continues to go, if it does, in fact, go anywhere. Well, in the U.S., and we talked about this, we were first talked about this here yesterday and even 3 days ago. Mainstream media now just really talking more about the fact that the U.S. is saying Canada has failed to stand up to some of the defense arrangements that we have with the U.S., some of the information sharing and pushing closer and closer to China. And now, as we said yesterday, and a board that has been in place for some time in terms of information sharing between, this is a defense board between Canada and the U.S., some of the top level. As your former minister of public safety in Canada, I can tell you I was part of the deliberations of information sharing at the highest levels related to terrorism, related to the highest levels of mafia, and the U.S. getting very nervous about Canada, and Prime Minister Carney drawing closer and closer all the time to China. And this announcement that there's no longer going to be the same level of information sharing is not a good thing for Canada, because information that we get from our allies is helpful to us and keeps Canada safe. So I do wish that Canadian media would stop playing their silly game of just heaping hatred toward the U.S. and saying, hey, we're losing the ability to be properly informed about whether it's terrorism attack, organized crime, whatever it might be. Something else that has just emerged, and give credit to the people over at the National Post for breaking the story here, and that's the significant amount of funding that the Canadian government has been applying and giving to Hamas, but through other agencies. This is into Gaza, and it's just come out that just very recently, $300,000 from the Canadian government, but it's flowing through a U.S. Catholic relief service, and then it goes to Gaza, and much of that money then gets directed by people who are actually in Hamas. Remember, the written goal of Hamas is to kill all Jews everywhere all the time and to annihilate Israel. And further funding sources, a good checking that's being done here. An organization known as Agial Association, the Agial Association, and they're called the Association for Creativity and Development in Gaza, has actually received, in a roundabout way, millions of dollars from the Canadian government. So Canadian government, which continues to refuse to stop funding the textbooks in Gaza, which teach children that Jews are animals, and the highest form of service they can do is to kill a Jew. Canada continues to fund this group. They do it through the United Nations Work Relief Agency. It's called UNRWA. And now it's coming out that Canada has been funding into Gaza money that gets to Hamas through this other Catholic group. At the very least, the Canadian government should stop hiding the ball. Just come right out and say we're funding Hamas. Just say it and don't try and be sneaky about it. Well, great article by Tyler Cohen, if you want to look it up. And he talked about back in 2022, he wrote an article about the death of wokeism. He said it was dying, it was going out. And he's commenting today on something that a number of us have been concerned about, that people have given up, or let's say they're hiding the ball better, uh, institutions, big companies, universities, because they know that people don't like the whole thing of forced woke and DEI and all of this thing. So they're moving away from that. But there has to be a channel for all the anger that comes from the woke crowd. And so he's actually predicting an increase in things like political assassination, violence on the street. So these same forces that hate what we would call Western culture or Judeo-Christian culture are going to continue to emerge, but only in more violent ways. And we hope that's not true, but it does seem to be a trend. And especially when you have these assassins that are killing people, it almost seems like in media what gets talked about more is, well, what made the person want to kill this individual? What made that person into an assassin? And so we have sympathy for them on that. So let's hope that Tyler Cohen's predictions on that are not accurate, but it seems to be the case. Yesterday, we were among the first to talk about something that happened, which really shows and kind of showcases the anger against AI, and that was in the commencement speech that we talked about this yesterday, and more are now jumping on the bandwagon of observing it, where somebody who was talking about some of the positive aspects of AI got booed by the students, graduating students. This is, smart young people in their 20s and booing anything to do with AI, while at the same time, of course, they're using AI to do their studies and in every area of their life. But it is a bit concerning, anger against AI development. Look, AI is like any technology breakthrough down through history. There are positives to it and there are negatives to it. And I've talked about the discovery of fire was a great thing. But I'm glad that those who were opposed to fire when it was discovered didn't shut it down. Yes, people can get burned, but if you control it, there are many benefits to heat and to energy. And this same push against AI, if it materializes like the extreme environmentalist groups did and have over the last couple decades, other countries then move ahead and gain the superiority in those areas. You don't want to see China gaining superiority in AI. They would and could use that for all kinds of enhanced military capabilities. You don't want to see the Islamist extremist world continue to move ahead with AI, but they will. So we really need to take a look at this. It's kind of, you've heard the expression Luddites. People are turning into Luddites when it comes to AI. By the way, that term, which is directed towards anybody who's opposed to sort of modern technology, it goes way back into the 1800s. 1811, there was a guy by the name of Ned Ludd. Ned Ludd, this is in the United Kingdom, and he's very upset because there were improvements being made in the weaving industry and the manufacture of clothes, and in fact, even how large amounts of wool would be cut by there used to be guys who developed huge muscles after a while, but in cutting the wool with giant shears, with these giant scissors, as it were. And then as technology improved and the weaving machines improved, you didn't need as many people to be involved in the weaving and in the shearing industry. And so he destroyed one of the weaving machines, and then other workers, and this continued for a number of years, went about to these factories destroying the machines that were modernizing the textile industry, to the place that actually the British government even sent in troops to stop the destruction of machines. So that's Ned Ludd. So if you're when you see here, Luddite is somebody who destroys the ability to see things modernized. Let's not turn into Luddites when it comes to AI. Let's control it. There will be downsides, but the benefits in health and medicine alone and science and technology are huge. Well, the Great Saunter, have you heard of the Great Saunter? When I was living in New York just a few years ago, working on a project there, the Great Saunter, it's an annual walk. It's literally a walk all around Manhattan. It's about 50K long, about 32 miles, so it takes a long time, 10 or so hours. Thousands of people take part in it, and it's just supposed to be a time where people kind of step back, they set aside the cars and the planes, and they take in their neighborhood. More and more Gen Z, more and more young people joining the Great Saunter. And kind of people are seeing it as a pushback and a reflection from all the doom scrolling and the addiction to the screens. And with that comes, and I'm not saying the two are related, but in case you didn't notice it, if you've got daughters or even some guys, jelly shoes are back, folks. Jelly shoes. These are plastic, literally plastic shoes. Some of us wore them way back in the day. They're back. They're hot. They're expensive. And you can get them with the little diamonds attached to them. So watch for that. I'm not saying that has anything to do with the Great Saunter, just telling you that that's back. I was recently in Oklahoma, down for a few days, as I mentioned to you, speaking at the state capitol there. And an amazing story that's evolved out of there. Back on April the 7th, there was a horrific incident where a young shooter, a potential shooter, went into Paul's Valley High School, and loaded with a couple of handguns, semi-automatic handguns, and he was about to kill a lot of students. Would have been deadly. His name was Victor Hawkins, and came in with these two guns. Well, the principal of the school, while everybody was running and hiding, he actually took a big deep breath, and he accredits God giving him strength. He prayed, and then he rushed. He tackled the student. They wrestled, and the student shot him in the leg before the principal was able to get the gun from him. But in fact, he stopped. The principal was responsible for stopping what could have been a horrific scene. So full credit being given to the principal there. And actually, what just happened in Oklahoma, as you know, in the high schools, they always elect the prom king and the prom queen from among the student body. This time, for this one, the students elected their principal, who had risked his life and saved them from the shooter. He was elected as the prom king. They actually raised $20,000 for him, because he's going to need a lot of work and prosthetic work relative to the wounds in his leg. He gave the money back. He gave it back to the students, to one of their student associations to help students. That triggered the Hobby Lobby, which is also in the Hobby Lobby owner. The headquarters is in Oklahoma City. David Green, whom I've met, one of the wealthiest guys in the U.S., he then donated $50,000 to the student union after this principal gave the $20,000 back. A whole round of very positive thing happening there, all because of the God-given courage of that principal. We're thankful for him, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you tomorrow.